Mount Rushmore was conceived with the intention of creating a site to lure tourists, representing not only the wild grandeur of its local geography but also the triumph of Western civilization over that geography through its anthropomorphic representation. Though for the latest occupants of the land at the time, the Lakota Sioux, as well as other tribes, the monument in their view, came to epitomize the loss of their sacred lands and the injustices they've suffered under the U.S. government. Under the Treaty of 1868, the U.S. government promised the territory, including the entirety of the Black Hills, to the Sioux, so long as the buffalo may range thereon in such numbers as to justify the chase. After the discovery of gold on the land, American settlers migrated to the area in the 1870s. The federal government then forced the Sioux to relinquish the Black Hills portion of their reservation. The four presidential faces were said to be carved into the granite with the intention of symbolizing an accomplishment born, planned, and created in the minds and by the hands of Americans for Americans. Mount Rushmore is known to the Lakota Sioux as the Six Grandfathers, or Cougar Mountain, but American settlers knew it variously as Cougar Mountain, Sugarloaf Mountain, Slaughterhouse Mountain, and Keystone Cliffs. As Six Grandfathers, the mountain was on the route that Lakota leader Black Elk took in a spiritual journey that culminated at Black Elk Peak. Following a series of military campaigns from 1876 to 1878, the United States asserted control over the area, a claim that is still disputed on the basis of the 1868 Treaty of Fort Laramie. Beginning with a prospecting expedition in 1885 with David Swansea, husband of Carrie Ingalls, and Bill Shalley, wealthy investor Charles E. Rushmore began visiting the area regularly on prospecting and hunting trips. He repeatedly joked with colleagues about naming the mountain after himself. The United States Board of Geographic Names officially recognized the name, Mount Rushmore, in June 1930. Historian Doane Robinson conceived the idea for Mount Rushmore in 1923 to promote tourism in South Dakota. In 1924, Robinson persuaded sculptor Gutzon Borglum to travel to the Black Hills region to ensure the carving could be accomplished. The original plan was to make the carvings in granite pillars known as the needles. However, Borglum realized that the eroded needles were too thin to support sculpting. He chose Mount Rushmore, a grander location, partly because it faced southeast and enjoyed maximum exposure to the sun. Borglum said upon seeing Mount Rushmore, "America will march along that skyline." Borglum had been involved in sculpting the Stone Mountain Memorial to Confederate leaders in Georgia, but was in disagreement with the officials there. After long negotiations involving a congressional delegation and President Calvin Coolidge, the project received congressional approval on March 3, 1925. The carving started in 1927 and ended in 1941 with no fatalities. The chief carver of the mountain was Luigi Del Bianco, an artisan and stonemason in Port Chester, New York. Del Bianco emigrated to the U.S. from Friuli in Italy and was chosen to work on this project because of his understanding of sculptural language and ability to imbue emotion in the carved portraits. In 1933, the National Park Service took Mount Rushmore under its jurisdiction. Julian Spotts helped with the project by improving its infrastructure. For example, he had the tram upgraded so it could reach the top of Mount Rushmore for the ease of workers. By July 4, 1934, Washington's face had been completed and was dedicated. The face of Thomas Jefferson was dedicated in 1936, and the face of Abraham Lincoln was dedicated on September 17, 1937. In 1937, a bill was introduced in Congress to add the head of civil rights leader Susan B. Anthony, but a rider was passed on an appropriations bill requiring federal funds be used to finish only those heads that had already been started at that time. In 1939, the face of Theodore Roosevelt was dedicated. The Sculpture Studio, a display of unique plaster models and tools related to the sculpting, was built in 1939 under the direction of Borglum. Borglum died from an embolism in March 1941. His son, Lincoln Borglum, continued the project. Originally, it was planned that the figures would be carved from head to waist, but insufficient funding forced the carving to end. Borglum had also planned a massive panel in the shape of the Louisiana Purchase commemorating in 8-foot-tall gilded letters the Declaration of Independence, U.S. Constitution, Louisiana Purchase, and 7 other territorial acquisitions from the Alaska Purchase to the Panama Canal Zone. In total, The entire project cost $989,992 and 32 cents, equivalent to $18.2 million in 2021. Nick Clifford, the last remaining carver, died in November 2019 at age 98. Harold Spitznagel and Cecil Doty designed the original visitor center, finished in 1957. These structures were part of the Mission 66 effort to improve visitors' facilities at national parks and monuments across the country. 10 years of redevelopment work culminated with the completion of extensive visitor facilities and sidewalks in 1998, such as a visitor center, the Lincoln Borglum Museum, and the Presidential Trail. Maintenance of the memorial requires mountain climbers to monitor and seal cracks annually. Due to budget constraints, the memorial is not regularly cleaned to remove lichens. However, on July 8, 2005, Alfred Karcher, a German manufacturer of pressure washing and steam cleaning machines, conducted a free cleanup operation which lasted several weeks, using pressurized water at over 200 degrees Fahrenheit. On October 15, 1966, Mount Rushmore was listed on the National Register of Historic Places. A 500-word essay giving the history of the United States by Nebraska student William Andrew Burkitt was selected as the college age group winner in a 1934 competition, and that essay was placed on the entablature on a bronze plate in 1973. In 1991, President George H.W. Bush officially dedicated Mount Rushmore. In 1937, when the sculpture was not yet complete, a bill in Congress supporting the addition of women's rights activist Susan B. Anthony failed. When the sculpture was completed in 1941, the sculptors said that the remaining rock was not suitable for additional carvings. This stance was shared by RESPEC, an engineering firm charged with monitoring the stability of the rock in 1989. However, proposals of additional sculptures have been made regardless. These include John F. Kennedy after his assassination in 1963, and Ronald Reagan in 1985 and 1999, the latter proposal receiving a debate in Congress at the time. Barack Obama was asked about his own potential addition in 2008 and he joked that his ears were too large. Donald Trump has on occasion expressed interest in his own addition to the mountain. During a 2017 rally in Ohio, he said, "I'd ask whether or not you someday think I will be on Mount Rushmore. If I did it joking. Totally joking. Having fun. The fake news media will say, he believes he should be on Mount Rushmore. So I won't say it." By the 2018 account of South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem, Trump described the potential addition as his dream in conversation. In August 2020, it was alleged that the previous year, White House aides working for President Donald Trump made contact with Noem the previous year about the process of adding additional presidents, including Trump, to the monument. According to a survey of political science experts conducted by the New York Times in 2018, Franklin D. Roosevelt is the most popular choice for addition to Mount Rushmore, regardless of party affiliation. In total, 66% of respondents would choose Roosevelt, followed by Barack Obama at 7% and Ronald Reagan at 5%. Among Democrats, Roosevelt was chosen by 75%, followed by Barack Obama at 11%. Among Republicans, Roosevelt was chosen by 43%, followed by Reagan at 19%. Among independents, Roosevelt was chosen by 57%, followed by both Reagan and Dwight D. Eisenhower at 11%. Tourism is South Dakota's second largest industry, and Mount Rushmore is the state's top tourist attraction. In 2012, 2,185,447 people visited the park. The popularity of the location, as with many other national monuments, derives from its immediate recognizability. There are no substitutes for iconic resources such as the Statue of Liberty, the Lincoln Memorial, or Mount Rushmore. These locations are one-of-a-kind places. However, Mount Rushmore also provides access to a surrounding environment of wilderness, which distinguishes it from the typical proximity of national monuments to urban centers like Washington, D.C., and New York City. In the 1950s and 1960s, local Lakota Sioux elder Benjamin Black Elk, son of Medicine Man Black Elk, who had been present at the Battle of the Little Bighorn, was known as the fifth face of Mount Rushmore, posing for photographs with thousands of tourists daily in his native attire. The South Dakota State Historical Society notes that he was one of the most photographed people in the world over the 20-year period. Mount Rushmore National Memorial is centered on a colossal sculpture carved into the granite face of Mount Rushmore in the Black Hills near Keystone, South Dakota. Sculptor Gutzon Borglum created the sculpture's design and oversaw the project's execution from 1927 to 1941 with the help of his son, Lincoln Borglum. The sculpture features the 60-foot tall heads of 4 United States presidents recommended by Borglum: George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Theodore Roosevelt, and Abraham Lincoln. The 4 presidents were chosen to represent the nation's birth, growth, development, and preservation, respectively. The memorial park covers 1,278 acres and the actual mountain has an elevation of 5,725 feet above sea level. The sculptor and tribal representatives settled on Mount Rushmore, which also has the advantage of facing southeast for maximum sun exposure. Doane Robinson wanted it to feature American West heroes, such as Lewis and Clark, their expedition guide Sacagawea, Oglala Lakota Chief Red Cloud, Buffalo Bill Cody, and Oglala Lakota Chief Crazy Horse. Borglum believed that the sculpture should have broader appeal and chose the 4 presidents. Peter Norbeck, U.S. Senator from South Dakota, sponsored the project and secured federal funding. Construction began in 1927. The presidents' faces were completed between 1934 and 1939. After Gutzon Borglum died in March 1941, his son Lincoln took over as leader of the construction project. Each president was originally to be depicted from head to waist, but lack of funding forced construction to end on October 31, 1941. Sometimes referred to as the Shrine of Democracy, Mount Rushmore attracts more than 2 million visitors annually. Mount Rushmore has been depicted in multiple films, comic books, and television series. Its functions vary from settings for action scenes to the site of hidden locations. Its most famous appearance is as the location of the final chase scene in the 1959 film North by Northwest. It is used as a secret base of operations by the protagonists in the 2004 film Team America: World Police. And the secret underground city of Cibola is located there in the 2007 film National Treasure: Book of Secrets. In some films, the presidential faces are replaced with others. Examples include the 1980 film Superman 2 and the 1996 film Mars Attacks, where the villains add their faces to the monument, and the 2003 film Head of State, where the newly elected president's face is added. An atypical representation of the monument appears in the 2013 film Nebraska, where instead of being treated with reverence, it is criticized for being unfinished.